Okay, as you probably heard that, we're going to be recording this. There's some people in the community who would like to watch this afterwards, so if that's okay. And I'm coming to you from the University of Victoria, and I'd like to acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen peoples on whose traditional territories the university stands, and the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Oceanic peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. And I have the great privilege of being in my office at UVic in the Center for Asia Pacific Initiatives, who's been a real uh, wonderful host for our project over the last. Actually, this is our 8th year. We have a 7-year project. We had an extension year, so next month we're wrapping up, and it's been quite a successful project. As you might have seen, the Broken Promises museum exhibit is right now touring. It's at the Museum of Surrey, and please see that. And then we also have a condensed museum exhibit going around. It'll be in Qualicum Beach Museum in the summer. You can find all this information on Landscapes of Injustice, but I just wanted to, again, welcome everyone. And we've got some great speakers. We've got Pat Jetté. She's in from Calgary, and she'll be starting off today. And it'll be a more of a it'll be a presentation with slides and lots of narrative and so many discoveries that she's had. And then in the second half, we're going to have more of a conversational format with both Brian Kobayakawa and Annie Sumi, both young musicians, Nikkei musicians who have collaborated for a very special project that they'll tell you a little bit more about. Without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Pat Jetté from Calgary. She's a Sansei, originally from Winnipeg, but now living in Calgary, as I mentioned. So over to you. You want to try and share your slides?
Okay.
Yep. Sure they can see it.
Is it okay?
You want to see that? Yep.
Okay, good to go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pat Jetté. A little bit of background. I've been dabbling with my JC and Japan heritage for some time. So I'm born in Winnipeg, post-internment, but live in Calgary. In Canada, I'm third generation ancestry on my father's side and fourth on my mother's. Several of our pioneers arrived prior to 1900 from Yamaguchi, Hiroshima, and Fukuoka prefectures. I hope you've enjoyed following the Landscapes of Injustice information sessions leading up to the database release last year. I hope you had the opportunity to explore the archives. This presentation is mainly visual with a combination of past finds, personal documents, photos, and of course, the latest discoveries from Landscapes of Injustice database. So where to search? I've searched Libraries and Archives Canada in the past. If you haven't used LAC, the website and services, check out some of the database collections, and the Census of Canada, Citizenship and Immigration Canada, the First World War attestation papers. For example, my husband's family are French Canadian with Acadian Quebec roots. Originally, I pre-mailed away for his grandfather's service records, but now they're available online for free. So the two census forms here, the one that's in sepia is when my grandfather was in New Westminster as a bachelor, and it says he immigrated in 1899. And in the 1921 census, 100 years ago now, he's married with 3 children and working at San Mateo Bay, just down the Alberni Canal in Vancouver Island. So these forms are from LAC as well. So the only original form I have from my grandfather is the Naturalization Certificates Act, the green one. And there's a number 9192 in the corner. And I was able to find his records on LAC. As you can see on the bottom, it's the same number on the right. And on the back of the form, it has his particulars. So where he was living, where he was born, his birthday, he was married at the time. But the information in handwriting is, I guess he had to register every year to fish certain kinds of species. So I guess it's the first act because it says APP on all the way down from 1925, and it stops, of course, in 1941. So this slide is information source, access to information request form. So I mailed away for the forms that he filled out to do his naturalization. So I received about 11 pages back in 2012. Some were grainy, but still a treat, I guess. At that time, you had to have resided in Canada for 14 years to apply for your naturalization. So this is still Libraries and Archives Canada. So in 2009, I mailed away for, they call it the Bird Commission or the Royal Commission. And I received 57 pages of photocopied items. They weren't that great either. But if you see on the bottom here, it says restricted until 2022, which of course are in the landscapes of injustice files now. So it wasn't very expensive to mail away for them. And it also gave you a list of the individual people who were claiming for their items after the war. So in the paperwork that I received via mail, there was land titles and descriptions of his property that he had. And I didn't really understand what they were because it was like catalog, lots, block numbers. They didn't have like a house address. So I belonged to the Alberta Family History Society, and one of the ladies in our group did a presentation on the township system and the legal descriptions. And in her presentation, she was referring to all these terms that were on these forms. So it was kind of interesting. So the legal description property match, she was able to determine from a little slip of paper that is hand scratched to find this document, and it locates all the lots and where they lived. So this is in Banfield.
Your grandfather?
So my grandfather owned property with, he had a couple of partners, and they developed a series of lots in Grappler Inlet in Banfield. So from there, I went to BC Assessment and found the exact lot. And here's the description of how it's laid out and everything, and a house number. But it's still very remote. It looks like that in the picture. We went there a couple of times. You can get there by boat, or they have a logging road. Oh, and also the barracks. Yep. This was his house, and the attachment on the back was a military barracks. They barged it down from Tofino, which is kind of ironic, I guess. Oops, sorry. Okay, so if you're wondering where Banfield is, there, I guess you've heard of the West Coast Trail. So it's a 75-kilometer packing trail, which is very popular. A remote fishing village located on the West Coast, west of Port Alberni, south of Tofino, I guess. They have a very active historical society, and this is one of their projects. I don't know if any of you kids have been to the Banfield Marine Science Center. So universities from Alberta and British Columbia have partnership in marine studies there. And that former site was the 1901 cable station. So the ladies that are sitting on that bench, I don't know who they are, but we were calling them the Cannery Girls. Okay, so this is from the Landscapes and Justice, so the emails and information we were receiving. So this is from last March. So that's when I started looking into the files. Also, they're in partnership with the Canadian Heritage. So here are some personal photos and actual paperwork, like an index card from the custodian, and just a brief outline of my grandfather. This is his son and my grandmother. Just an overview.
Once you're done.
Yeah. So order and council, PC 117, these are my mom's registration cards. So if you notice, compulsory registration began in spring of 1941, and hers was April 1941, but Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941. So what's available on Landscapes? So these are some forms. So the pages that are coming up are forms I found, just different documents from different, I guess, government and neighbors and things like that. So this is their Hastings Park card. So because they were from the coast, I guess they started out at Powell Street, which I didn't know that. That was new to me. And then they went to Hastings Park before getting dispersed into the interior. So on here, it has my grandmother's birthday, when they were evacuated, and also it has her parents' names and her mother's maiden name, which is, you know, sometimes you don't know that information at all. So this is just the letterhead from the Hastings Park clearing station. So my mom had a sewing machine, and lucky for her, because she lived in Stevenson, she was able to put it away in storage. So that's her sewing group. So the serial number that's on the machine matches the letter and everything from the company where they stored it. Yes, and I have it in my house. So here's some paperwork, letters from, that one's the Navy. It's hard to read, it's a little fuzzy. And one of the caretakers. And she said Japanese left here on March 6th. So I don't know who left there. It was if it was the men who had to take their boats down, or if it was the whole family, or I don't know. So there was quite a few families living in Grappler Creek or Grappler Inlet, 5 or 6 Japanese families. So as they were only allowed to take whatever they could carry, the contents of their homes were left behind on their property. The evacuees, even, I think their local neighbors thought they'd be returned. So people would leave things like photo albums and personal items behind, because that was a common thing, I guess. So if they had perishables like milk and wood, they gave them to the neighbors or the people who were going to look after their homes for them. So from Banfield, they went to Hastings Park, and my father went to road camp. So he was on the Revelstoke-Sicamous Highway project. So it's near Griffin Lake or Three Valley Gap in that area. So these letters are from those locations, and he's still asking about his boat and things like that. So from Hastings Park, my grandparents, they went to Sandon, which is the old mining town that they used for internment. And, they had an arranged marriage just before they went there. So I guess maybe that's where they had their honeymoon. But my brother was born there.
Parents on your grandparents.
They went to- So from there, they went to Roseberry, which is down the road from Sandon. And my second brother was born there. So they're still writing letters from these locations. So my father was asking about his engine and things like that. What happened to it, or if he was going to get any money for it. So from Roseberry, they went to Tashme. And also here, they're still writing letters to inquire about their property and whatnot, personal goods. So the 2 little boys are my older brothers. There's a bit of an age gap. So now they went from fishing to farming. So they ended up in Oakville, Manitoba, on a sugar beet farm, Mr. Tully's farm. My mom said Mr. Tully was a good man. So they're still continuing to ask about their house, and so this was on the Nikkei National Museum website, which was a nice surprise. So that was one of their projects they did. So there's my grandfather at his house before evacuation. So the Bird Commission, the Royal Commission of Japanese Claims. So they didn't agree with what assessment they were receiving. So they put a claim in with the Bird Commission review, and their lawyer was the Honorable Solcherniak. So these 2 pictures, I've seen this picture because we had it, but the other picture I never saw before, but it was included on the Landscapes of Injustice files. Here's more samples of the paperwork that was in the files. So the stuff that was left in his home, the new values, and I guess they were auctioned off. So I'm not sure if this was the auction price or not. And there was a couple of things they couldn't find, a camera. But I don't know if they had more than one camera because they had quite a few pictures from the internment. So this is also available online. It's the ledger form for the vessels that were sold. That's my father's registration cards. And more letters about getting a reasonable price for his vessel. So you get $865. So more forms from landscapes. So personal property, vessel, gear, loss. I guess there was his boat. They didn't have too many pictures of his boat, vessel. So here he is, my grandfather now in Winnipeg, 1950. That's a house I grew up at. And his final letter for his property claims, Japanese Property Claims Commission letter, his last one from 1950.
How much is it?
$365.66. So he had written a letter to one of the ladies in Banfield, and he said, there's no place there's no good place as West Coast. I don't know when I could see my dear old Banfield again. So he never went back. So here they are in 1953, I guess, at a picnic. So my grandfather, my father, his brother, their wives, grandmother, and one of the grandkids. So in 1988, the redress movement achieved compensation for surviving Issei and Sansei generations. But as you can see by the date, they never saw the redress because they passed away 1953, 84, 78, 64.
Your mom and your brothers did though.
Yeah. So here are my sources. If you want to check out more information. And I'd like to give special thanks to Mike and the Landscapes and Injustice Group. It was really past the time for COVID, looking up all this information. And I'd like to thank Linda Kawamoto-Reed at the Nikkei Museum for helping me with the genealogy in Japan. And also I'd like to thank Lisa Ueda, Laura Saimoto, and Kevin Akabe for keeping us all involved. Any questions?
Wow, that was really great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, we do have a bit of time for questions before we go to our next speakers. Uh, yeah, really, like so, those pictures. Where are those pictures that you of the two brothers in the camp? Is that from your personal collection or?
Yes, we have lots of
Wow,
pictures.
those are amazing, amazing.
That's why when they say they couldn't find the camera, I don't know what that meant.
Okay.
Unless they had two.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there was another box camera I think down below that said it was $5 that was reassessed at $3.
And
But anyone out there with questions? You can either put up that go into reactions and put up your hands. I don't know if I can see everybody here.
I have a question, Mike.
Yeah.
This is Debbie
Oh,
Jen.
hi, Deb. Hi, Debbie. Yeah,
How are you?
good.
Just move my chat so I can see you there. Thank you, Pat, so much for your presentation. I've been doing a lot of research on First World War Japanese Canadian soldiers, and
Yes,
I wasn't able to find your grandpa in your dad in the LAC files.
attestation. Oh, he wasn't in World War One.
Yes, World War One.
Yeah,
And
my father and grandfather weren't in service in World War One.
oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was talking about my husband's family. That's how I mailed away for their stuff, the French Canadians.
Gotcha. Okay, so Hiraoka was never in First World War.
No, but
Okay.
one of the ladies in Banfield had said that, oh, she thought he served in World War One or he volunteered. So I don't know what happened if he somehow didn't go or what.
Okay, well, I'll dig around.
That's not confirmed.
Okay, I'll find out. And I just want to let you know, I did find some pictures of the Sartus, of the owners who had that boat. I'll send you those pictures.
Oh,
I've been trawling around other people's Facebook groups and found it, so I will send that to you.
okay.
Thank you, Pat.
Welcome.
Thanks, Debbie. And yeah, Pat, your story was fascinating in that if you were to do you encompass almost all of the different places involved in the incarceration and the internment. I mean, you had sugar beet farms, you had fishing, you had Hastings Park, you had the road camps, you had, of course, the internment camps, Sandon and Roseberry. So, really, it was a real, not model, but very, very comprehensive look at. It's atypical. I think it was very widespread. So
Yeah, they moved around
they
7 times, I think.
they sure did.
But
Lillian Nakamura McGuire has a question. Hi, from
Hi,
Whitehorse.
hi, Pat. That's amazing. That is amazing work that you've done. Just fascinating. So it sounds like you did a lot of research before the landscapes of injustice files went on. So when you obtained access to those files, did you feel that that really expanded your range of materials?
oh yes. You mean the landscapes itself that just came out?
Well, the files that were that you had access to.
Oh, okay.
Did you?
Oh yeah. I didn't know not that much about it. I didn't know they went, well, with landscapes, I didn't know where they went to Powell Street and lived there.
Okay.
And
Oh,
all
I
that stuff.
see. So
Yeah.
that really expanded your view of things. I
Mhm.
guess I didn't realize that those files in the landscapes of injustice,
Mhm.
I didn't realize that those files were completely open. Like I thought that a person had to put those specific materials into those files, but it sounds like they were just the files that were from the federal government.
Yeah, federal government files.
Okay.
Yes.
Many pages.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we had like over 400 in the landscapes, but when I mailed away for them, they weren't as many.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't complete. The pictures weren't there,
Okay.
and you had to pay a fee and you weren't supposed to share them.
Okay.
Those were the terms.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you very much. Just incredible work.
Yeah, I'll just comment a bit about how we came to acquire those the not only the Bird Commission files but the case files, the 15,000 plus case files. Was not really originally one of the objectives of our project. We were just going to have on our database those those that we used and acquired. But I see Jordan here. Maybe you can finish off that, complete that story of how we got these incredible files.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And thanks, Pat, for that very rich reconstruction of your family's history and amazing design of your PowerPoint. Also, amazing layered kind of presentation.
Publisher.
Yeah. So when we started the project, we found that about 10% of the files of Japanese Canadians were available on that Canadiana Heritage site, and it seemed to be sort of arbitrary. It had to do with if I think it had, there wasn't much institutional memory there at Library and Archives Canada, but I think it had to do with the files were on microfilm. And so if an individual Japanese Canadian had requested that their own file be reviewed, then the whole reel would be opened. And then those open reels were digitized and put up on Canadian Heritage. And so partly on the prodding of some historians here, the Switzers in Victoria, we asked Library and Archives Canada, you seem to have made 10% of these files available, but it's sort of it doesn't seem like there's any particular logic to it. It's not ones that are less sensitive that are open or anything. So would it make sense to just open all of them? And so they agreed with us that if we would host them and make them searchable, because that heritage site is much less, or heritage site is much less searchable. You can't search for any of the content of the reels. That if we would make them available and host them, and in the end, Mike ended up doing sessions like these and really make the materials much more accessible and available, that they would do the work of reviewing and opening all the files. And then they did new digitizations of the Bird Commission as well as part of that, which are much higher quality than what was previously available. And so, yeah, that's how that partnership emerged.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And also uncovered those 300 some odd letters of protest that you did access, or you found in the writing wrongs, which was also originated from, or was prompted by the Landscapes of Injustice research. Yeah, thank you very much. That was like I said, it was an amazing story and so well documented. And even though you had done so much research before, it was really nice to hear that you found even more by using our database. And when I first saw that, Jordan, when I first saw that PowerPoint a few months ago, I thought, Danielle, the daughter, creative graphic designer, helped her do that. She said, no, did all by yourself. So kudos to you. Very well.
Probably the opposite cause, right? Mom got her daughter interested in graphic design somehow.
Maybe that's, yeah. Okay, well, thank you. We're going to continue on. Thank you again, Pat. And
thanks a lot.
Stay around if we have more questions afterwards. And now I'd like to introduce Brian Kobayakawa and Annie Sumi.
Hi.
And they're on camera now. And I guess I first was contacted by Annie, and she had heard about our project and was looking for more information about her family, because she heard that we had some records. So this was before the database was actually open and directly accessible, but we had the files. So I pulled files for her and for Brian and cleaned them up a bit and sent them. And then I hear back from her saying, "Oh, this is really great. This is wonderful discoveries, and also that I think maybe you were looking for them because you were doing a project. So maybe without putting imagining what the story is. I'm going to let you tell the story. But before I do, I want to just ask you individually to tell us a little bit about yourselves and your music, and then about how you collaborated on this other project. So Annie, perhaps first.
Sure, yeah. My name's Annie Sumi. Nice to meet you all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you, Michael, for creating space for us to talk. Um, and I am a musician. That's what my practice is. And before this project, predominantly solo songwriting and playing in different formations, um, writing and performing abroad. And yeah, it's been a really, we'll dig into what this project has been for us, but it has been a really beautiful departure for me from what I do as a solo artist to what Brian and I have been able to do together. So I'm excited to share some of that with you.
Great, thank you. And Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian Kobayakawa. I'm a musician also from Toronto, a bass player first and foremost, and a composer as well. And yeah, I've made my life backing up singers, composing for groups that I've played in, a bunch of different musical projects. And yeah, through the last few years, I've been really focused on creating something with Annie that started as a commission from the Japanese Canadian Cultural Center, which they'd commissioned Annie to present a concert of music around a theme of oral traditions. And Annie reached out to me and was keen for us to collaborate on it. And so we partnered and weren't sure what we were doing. But we just started researching, talking about our family stories, talking about, the impact of internment, the impact of being Japanese Canadian. I'm Sansei and he's Yonsei, so we had a bit of a differing there, but also we both are mixed race with Caucasian mothers and Japanese fathers, and I don't know, we just kept finding all these overlaps that were just shocking and exciting, and let us speak about things that maybe we hadn't spoken about a lot to anyone, and in the context of creating art around it, which was really special and exciting. Do you want to take it, Annie?
Yeah. I remember, so we had some really early, incredible collaborations. One of my favorites was at the Toronto Public Library, for any folks who are in Toronto. And I was able to uncover, my great-grandfather was published in a book, in an anthology of poetry, and a copy existed at the Toronto Public Library. It's called Paper Doors. And so I was able to uncover this little book of poetry, and Brian and I had this session where we were like, okay, like let's dig into these words, let's figure out what it is that we're trying to get at the heart of here with our very similar ancestral stories. And that kind of led us towards you, Michael, which was the beginning of our relationship with Landscapes of Injustice, and some of the deeper research, because up until that point, frankly, for me, and I think for Brian as well, we didn't have a ton of information about our ancestral stories, and specifically around internment, because as I'm sure so many folks in this space understand, those stories often go untold. And so there was so much for us to discover in the research that Landscapes of Injustice helped to put together for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And right around the same time that Michael shared all the huge pile of documents that were quite moving to go through. And I remember Annie kind of warning me of like, you need to give yourself some space, some time and care to go into this. And I remember just having this folder of the files from Michael and, kind of looking at it from different angles and almost opening it and waiting for the exact right time. And as all that's happening, it's also very early days of COVID. And our idea of a commissioned concert, with a date that seemed absolutely impossible as we were in the first lockdown, had us questioning what we were doing and what our plan was. And we loosely came up with the idea of what if we record the music create an art installation, something that's pandemic proofed a bit, in that we don't require everyone to experience it in a room together at once, but it could be something that people could walk through a gallery and experience it one at a time, or something that would, recorded music that could live in any number of situations that a concert wouldn't. And around that same time, we started digging deeper into the documents from Michael, and finding one in specific that stood out to me of the documentation of my bachan's sewing machine being sent. Everybody's got a sewing machine in this
Yeah, Pat,
community.
it's so much like
We saw,
your grandmother's
Pat, it
sewing
looks
machine.
so, yeah. We saw that slide, and I think we both grinned and giggled of like, we got one of those too.
Yeah.
But realizing that, seeing that documentation of the sewing machine, the files documenting its move from West Vancouver to Slocan, where my bachan and jichan were interned, and where my father was born, and realizing I know that sewing machine. It's been in my parents' basement my whole life, and I've used to shoot tennis balls at it as a street hockey net when I was little, and so it's actually become the centerpiece of the installation that we're going to open at the JCC sometime probably June of this year, but exact dates to be determined. So we've actually devised a system where the treadle of the sewing machine spins the wheel as it would to operate the machine, but we've attached magnets and sensors to the machine so that the movement of the wheel and the treadle create wireless digital signals that go to a computer, telling it to play music and visuals that we've pre-established from the work we've been making. And fingers crossed, it it keeps doing that indefinitely.
Yeah, and just kind of going back there, Brian, I was so going back to those moments when we were uncovering those documents in those folders. And I remember not only, having this sort of ecstatic moment, putting that piece together where we were like, oh, this sewing machine is still in your family. But also maybe being artists, maybe being sensitive folk, going through each and every one of the items on those auctioned goods lists and just feeling what that meant. There's a tangibility and a memory in everything that we acquire as people. We give some spirit to all the little trinkets in our homes, and to think of all of these things that were auctioned off, each one of those items felt like they held a particular story in them that we no longer had the ability to hold on to. And so a lot of the documents really did end up either inspiring really deep conversations between Brian and I, which ended up inspiring lyrical content. And some of the documents themselves literally inspired lyrical content for some of the work we did, and are continuing to do. And we had a really special, we had kind of composed a song that incorporated a lot of those items. And we had some special opportunity last summer to invite our families into a recording studio, which for both of us was a very new concept. My family had never been in that realm of my life before, so that was so special. And specifically because we were inviting them to take part in what had been for us a very healing process of being able to speak some of these listed goods out loud, or the numbers associated to our ancestors during the internment, to be able to kind of get rid of this from our bodies in some way, if you kind of know what I mean, felt really cathartic. And it was very, very special to share that with our families. Yeah.
Wow.
Should we play some music? Would now be a good time to show some? So why don't we play that piece that Annie's talking about specifically? So is the entirety of the lyrics pulled from Landscapes of Injustice? Yeah, I think every word is an item that was mentioned in Annie's family or my family's correspondence with the government, and the Bird Commission. I think was a large part of it, of trying to figure out where their chattels, as they are referred to so many times in these documents, had gone off to. So I'll share that in a second. If you care to, if you go in your Zoom preferences, you can actually go in audio, and there's a high fidelity music mode and stereo audio, which will make it sound better, but it'll work
Even better.
either way. Yeah. If you care to do that.
So this one we're calling chattels. Yeah.
So let me share the audio. Okay, if it's not playing in a few seconds, somebody tell me.
You're right, it's not playing.
Not yet. Do you need to put that audio spotlight on?
Yeah, not hearing it, Brian.
Oh no?
Not yet.
Maybe I forgot to hit OK.
Do we have to do that share? Oh, here we
Yeah,
go.
I think I just forgot the last mouse click.
Perfect.
There we go.
Jetté, lay, lay. Jetté, lay, lay. Jetté, lay, lay, lay. An icebox, an incubator, a rusted 7-horsepower motor, a set of drawers, a tarnished mirror, a picture frame and chicken wire, a well-used set of garden tools, a chest of ceremonials, a baby buggy and the dining room chairs, a gramophone and a box of records, a General Electric push-button radio, a treadle-powered singer-sewing machine.
I feel like I wanna just look at these a little bit. Like
a butter churn, a crosscut saw, a 50-gallon Red Wing crock, a wash tub, a thermos flask, a wooden wagon with the wheels attached, a double-hinge fold-up ironing board, a brass blade and gasoline torch, an A.J. Donahue Winnipeg chair, a gramophone, and a box of records. A General Electric push-button radio. A treadle-powered singer-sewing machine. A General Electric push-button radio. A treadle-powered singer-sewing machine.
Oops.
Awesome. That was great. Yeah. I can
Thank
just
you.
picture, my grandmother's shed, with all these things that she had from the war,
Right.
or the wagons or things like that they're playing with in Paldi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't even know what they
Impressive.
were. We had to look,
Yeah.
what is an A.J. Donahue Winnipeg chair?
Yeah.
Which turns out it's something I wish that our families still had, because it's a very cool looking chair.
And what mystery too, right? Like there are so many items where we're like, a box of ceremonials? Like what was
Oh,
in that
yeah.
box? And
Yeah.
I wish that was still in our families. So there were so many moments like that where we were going through those documents and just feeling like nostalgic for something that we had no idea even what it might have been, which was very beautiful. I feel like it was a beautiful part of the process.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because I had a little bit of you had sent a few things. There was something about a boat, Brian.
Hmm.
Can you
Yeah, that
can
was
can I ask you about that, or is that
for sure. That's
top
something that
secret?
actually started before this project, and I think maybe in some ways influenced Annie and I deciding to work together, or maybe her being interested in working with me. Um, it was actually my first dig into, family history, genealogical things in a music making practice, and it was sort of discovered by accident. I've toured many times across Canada and back and forth, and I've also known that I had a cousin who at the time I hadn't met and since have on Gabriel Island. But she was sort of distant from the part of my family I knew, and so I was touring in BC maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, and just started Googling, looking for contact information if there was a way I could look her up, because I had a gig on an island nearby and wanted to invite her. But what I did find instead was the BC Nautical History Society, who are very into old documents and but of nautical history. And so my Jichan and two brothers of his were all boat builders. And so Kobayakawa Boat Works was the name of their boat building company. And so this was the first time I'd ever heard of that. My dad had, in passing, mentioned my Jichan, who'd passed away before I was born, had built boats and was a boat builder. And I didn't quite realize it was a family business, and that it was that there were dozens of crafts that had with a history. And so finding all this documentation got me very excited. And it was while I was also in a writing period for an album I released in 2018 under the name Brava Kilo. So for that, I just started digging deeper and finding previous owners of some of these boats who were excited to share, videos. And then it culminated with one boat that was in a marina near Ladysmith. I spoke to the owners of it at the time, who invited me to come spend some time on the boat and come to their home and have tea and ask them questions about it. And I made a bunch of field recordings while I was on the boat of, me smacking things with my hands and the bell of the boat and using whatever found objects were around to hit things together and just capture sound that I then turned into sort of a drum machine of boat sounds, which I used on that record, and then we're also using in this project as well. So it's some boat sounds from boats that my family built. Yeah, boats that had gone through many hands since, and then I got to spend some time one afternoon on one of them, which was quite special.
That's amazing. Wow, thank you. I didn't really know that the backstory to that. So wonderful. Thank you. Was there anything else, Annie, that you had found that really stuck out, other than the chattels,
Yeah.
anything about your
I guess
grandparents?
there was a really special find for me that wasn't through Landscapes of Injustice, but I'd grown up hearing stories about this time my great grandfather was invited to the CBC radio to recite some of his poetry. And I remember like my dad telling me these stories of like being a teenager and at a party and like had to stop the party to tune into CBC radio to listen to my great grandpa recite poetry. And so it was this very beautiful little story in my head. And kind of one of the ones that really stood out to me the most, because outside of this moment, like most of the stories I would hear about my great grandfather were actually kind of that he was very reserved and wasn't a very present figure in our family. But this memory kind of stuck out as this shining memory of him. And so I reached out to one of the archivists at the CBC radio, and he was actually able to find this recording of Choichi Ando Sumi reciting his poetry on the radio back in 1976. And And it was the first time I had any conscious memory of, well, I have no conscious memory of his voice. Actually, he died when I was less than a year old. But to hear his voice with me now in this day was so special to me, just because I feel like it was part of my cellular memory in some way. And hearing him speak just really brought up a lot in my own little world. And it also was very touching for my family, for me to have been able to find that. And
Wow.
so, yeah, that's been special.
Can I ask you a question about his poetry? Now, was it haiku or was it
Yeah.
Western? Was it? So
Yeah.
some of them on the call here, can you help me out here? I thought that name is very familiar. What's his name? What, Sumi?
Choichi Hando Sumi.
Sorry, one more time.
Choichi Hando Sumi.
Choichi.
Yeah.
Was he in Tashmi? Was he one of the?
He was Roseberry, actually.
Roseberry.
Pat.
Okay, you did say that. Okay.
Yeah, he was interned at Roseberry, and yeah, his he had tuberculosis. He had quite a story behind him. He was a firstborn son here on Main Island, and so he was sent back to Japan for his education for 6 or 7 years away from the family. So I think that left a bit of an impression on him. And when he came back, they were farmers out on Main Island. These are all the stories I have with me, but they were farmers out on Main Island, and he did suffer through some tomato farmers. Yeah, hothouse tomatoes. That's our claim to fame.
Yeah. Wow, this is cool.
Yeah, and so it was really special to be able to find his poetry, because it was sort of like a legend, for a really long time, and to be able to hear him even speak it was next level. And Brian and I have been able to work that into some of our creations together too.
Wow, that's really great. Thank you. I'm going to see if anyone on the call, if wants to join in and ask questions of Annie, Brian, or Pat. Oh, I got a hand there from Jordan.
Oh, Jordan.
I just wanted to comment on the song. That was so neat for me to hear. Sometimes I get asked about, the research findings of the project, what were the most remarkable research findings. And I often think about the auctions and also the theft of everyday items, like the personal items. And that was something that a research assistant on our project really discovered, the extent of the looting of those personal items, and then also the number of auctions and how much stuff was sold at auction. And I often also think about what it would look like to kind of empty my household out into a market of auction going people, and what would happen to everything that constitutes kind of our lives. So that was just amazing to hear you guys make music from it, and that was part of a process for you of kind of grappling with that history as well, and kind of cleansing yourself of it. I think just amazing. And I was just wondering the kind of refrain I put in the chat there, but is the refrain in that song kind of chattels? Is that what we're
saying? It's a General Electric push button radio, which was one of the items.
Okay.
And a treadle powered Singer sewing machine.
Okay.
It's a mouthful.
Several times Annie says treadle-lay-lay-lay.
Treadle-lay-lay.
Which is not a real word.
Which was just playing with the phonics of the treadle of the sewing machine.
Yeah. So is that song kind of out in the world, or is it private? Is it yours?
No, this is actually the first time we've told anyone outside of our own personal circles about this, so it's very exciting for us on that front. The installation exhibit is to open probably in June at the Japanese Canadian Cultural Center, and around the same time these songs will be released in some capacity, definitely on all the streaming online formats, and in some probable physical
form.
bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At this point, there's 4.5 songs, and there's also a visual component which we've been working on that uses some of the landscapes of injustice actual documents. We hired a shadow puppetry duo out of Vancouver called Mind of a Snail, and they've been using the actual documentation as well as imagery that came to their minds, imagery that Annie and I suggested to make a visual component that will be part of the installation, synced to the music. And a lot of that is superimposed on top of footage I took in BC last summer, where I actually went to Rosebery and to Slocan and points in between, and did a bunch of research while I was out there and finding the actual exact spots as best we could. And used a photo that Annie's family had of Rosebery that was, the photo history in their family of that's where that all happened. And so I was driving up and down the highway trying to find that exact spot to try and get some footage. So we have a bunch of just very slow, still nature footage of what's happening in those spots now, and shadow puppetry to be superimposed over that's in progress, and not something that's in a super great state to share now, but will be very soon.
Wow. And did you say your families were involved in some of the recordings as well, or in that recording?
Yeah, not in that version that we played, but on that very song, we have that refrain we were just talking about, sung by all kinds of members of both our families in a double dip morning and evening family summer barbecue recording session pandemic combo day that it was really a special day in this project.
It was like Japanese family picnic, but simultaneously a recording project.
Yeah.
It was really fun. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's really amazing. I know that my former student Caitlin Finley will be really interested and inspired to hear that song too, and to see the work. And it sounds like the whole installation sounds amazing. So thanks for all that work. That's amazing stuff.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been.
Caitlin, by the way, is Annie is in visiting her partner and they are right near Utica right now. Utica.
Oh.
And Caitlin is at Cornell, so.
Okay.
Just
cool.
up the road.
Wow.
That's why I was asking where you were at.
Yeah.
Okay, well, any other questions? Any other final comments? Pat, did you want to say anything? If not.
Question, Annie.
Yeah.
So were your grandparents in Rosebery the whole time, or just part of the time?
The whole time, yeah. So my grandfather and his family were in Rosebery, and my grandmother was at Tuscany.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
So
I
my
have
grandmother.
pictures of people in Rosebery, but I don't know who they are.
Wow. It's possible that my grandfather would have been part of those, and his siblings.
I'll have to
Yeah.
get your email.
That would be amazing. I would love to connect with you about that, Pat. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get you in touch with each other.
Yeah.
And Debbie Yang has been doing she's working on this wonderful project with LAC and putting a lot of photos on the Japanese Canadian Facebook and having people identify, because the captions that are there are very insufficient. So maybe, Debbie, you wanted to tell us a little bit about that project that you're doing? Oh, your audio is...
I think you're muted, Debbie.
Okay, my
Yes,
microphone. Thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, thanks for this opportunity. Just put a little plug for a project that I'm working on with the Gregg Center for the Study of War and Society. They're in UNB in New Brunswick. It's just a little project that's called Missing Voices. They have been already working on it to study the lives of soldiers in the First World War who are from Black Canadian families and nursing sisters. And when I used to do this project at Library and Archives Canada, I used to do it for all high school students whichever soldier they would choose from their local cenotaph. And now, 10, 15 years later, I'm no longer working there, but a contact I had who created the Lest We Forget Cenotaph Research Project, Blake Seward, is still teaching, and he's on a sabbatical right now, working with the Gregg Center. And he called me up around Christmas to ask if I'd be interested in doing Lest We Forget again, but on something I'm very passionate about, and which is the Japanese Canadians in the First World War. So it was kind of an unexpected call, but he said that it's not part of the larger Missing Voices project because I think it came as a bit of an afterthought, which is okay. They didn't get the funding to do the Japanese Canadian soldiers, but it's something that I've always wanted to do anyway, and this could come under the umbrella of their major project. And so I'm looking for teachers all across Canada who have an interest in primary sources and teaching students how to use primary sources. We will be using the actual military personal records of First World War soldiers. There's over 230 or so names that are of Japanese Canadian soldiers. Much of the work has been done very well by Linda Kawamoto Reed at the Nikkei Museum. Many teachers have actually already looked at these files also, but it's a process of looking at these old documents that's very valuable to teenagers, and to get them to do the process, even though, these files have been cracked open by other historians and have even published works about some of these soldiers. We believe it is a project that's worth high school students to try and piece together the history of a soldier's life. And so we are not just doing the 54 who died, but also any and every Japanese Canadian who served in the CEF. And so it will be done through a website. The Gregg Center is putting together a huge database, and they'll have a website as well. So we're just in the process of starting that. Looking for teachers to join a Train the Trainer session on April the 6th. And Michael, I can send you that information.
Okay, yeah,
And
great.
it's just a 1 hour, basically Zoom call.
Mhm.
And it will teach teachers how to do this project. And then they will do it in their own classrooms with a selected bunch of Japanese Canadian soldiers that they'll be assigned. And it will be at 1 p.m. on April 6th. Just an afternoon. It'll be 4 o'clock in Ottawa, where Blake Seward will be joining me, and we'll both be training the trainer sort of through a slideshow, kind of like what we're doing today, just walk teachers through it. I have about 8 teachers so far from across Canada, and we could certainly take more. Yeah, and then on Facebook group, I know some of you tuning in have seen me post pictures, and I try to help the museums get better descriptions, because it'll say Oriental man standing next to a boat. Well, that's not very good for research. And so many people have recognized their ancestors on those pictures, and it's just a lot of fun for me to put identities. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so
Appreciate that.
welcome.
Yeah. And and I guess we're in the commercial time. Just wanted to mention that we have one more event before the end of our project. This is a little bit more geared towards our new proposal for Past Wrongs, Future Choices. It's called Legalize Racism from the Local to the Global, the case of Nikkei people in the 1940s. And this one we'll be looking at.
Oh, Mike, you went mute.
You muted the mic.
Am I muted now?
There you go.
You're
Now
good.
you're better, yeah.
From the very beginning of the show? Oh no. We'll be doing Australia, we'll be doing Brazil, Mexicans. So we'll have guest speakers. We'll have Eric Adams from the University of Alberta. We'll have Jessica Fernandez de Lara Harada from Cambridge University in the UK. We've got Masumi Izumi from Doshisha University in Kyoto. Eric Muller from University of North Carolina School of Law, and Rainer Thwaites from University of Sydney in Australia. So a whole wide range of people talking about the legal histories, and that'll be chaired by our very own Victor Ramraj, who's a law professor here at University of Victoria and director of of the Center for Asia Pacific Initiatives. He was here today. He just had to leave at the top of the hour for another meeting. But yeah, if you're able to make that, that's exactly a month away. It's the same time, same day, March 23rd at 3 p.m. our time, Pacific time. So if you can, please join us for that. And I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. Special thanks to our wonderful speakers, Pat, Brian, and Annie. Looking forward to your opening at the Japanese Canadian Cultural Center in June or so. And thank you, as always, to John for helping us out with all the technical support here at CAPI, and for the advertising of our events, and for Jordan for heading up this wonderful project, Landscapes of Injustice. So thank you very much for joining us, and
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Thank you so much.